actually set up some music in the background here. Do that. Feeling
Turn it on low because
Sanctuary
I'm
Dean
easily
Doka.
distracted.
Yeah, well, it'll only be for me. I'll be the only one who can hear it.
That's good. Wow, you think I know how computers work, right?
Yeah.
You think I'm old enough?
Yeah, no, no, sorry. Let me just make sure the volume on that is fine for these guys. Yeah, no, it's quiet. All right.
There's
Cool.
one person watching.
Yeah, no, I have someone watching. But the main thing is it'll also be saved to your channel, so like people can watch it after the fact.
Oh my god, it's Cosmic Thunderdoom. Hold on a
No,
second.
wait, I gotta look at this. What?
Hold on.
God is a candidate. Okay, ignore that. I don't know why that auto played.
Cosmic Thunderdoom. Wow, yeah, that delay is fearsome, but all right.
All right, live stream with T minus boom. Looking at the live chat. All right, I'm gonna have a copy of your live chat open next to me so I can actually see what's going on. I'll have your video paused, but I just want to be able to see your chat. All right, so if you go to the slideshow and just pull up the first slide there, we can get this started. So
All right, give me just a moment.
yeah, while you're working on that, I'll explain. So Magic System Monday and I have been talking a little behind the scenes about like metas for Magic systems and the like. I actually got featured in one of his recent videos. But when we were going over more content that he could do, one thing that came up was the live stream format, and we needed a discussion for that. And we settled on Magic systems that we like, but nonetheless have problems with. This first shot here is from Full Metal Alchemist. I'm sure everyone will agree it's an amazing show. Both, although Brotherhood is obviously way better. Fight me. um, but we do have some notes, and we have some other series in here, and we'll just go off on whatever tangent makes us happy at the time. All right. As the one to
I got my
select
notes in the right places.
the screenshots for Full Metal Alchemist, I figured it makes sense to let you take the lead on this one.
Give me just a second. I have to find them.
No, take your time. We have quite a while actually. I have 3.5 hours. I don't think we're gonna go that long, but
Hopefully not. I think I'll be maxed out at about. All right, save.
yeah, let's try and not go that long. Although I'm sure Mooney, who is listening in, would love for that. Assuming they could stay awake themselves, they've fallen asleep to my voice before. Hi,
It's pretty
Mooney.
late already.
Oh yeah, Cosmic Thunderdome. Yes, this stream will automatically be saved to his YouTube channel. This isn't like a Twitch where it's only there for like 2 weeks. Unless you do something specific to like delete it, it'll be saved. He doesn't have to do a single thing. Of
Well, it
course, if it
depends on how
goes,
stupid I sound on
yeah,
here.
yeah, if it goes poorly enough, maybe.
Okay.
We'll send you a copy. How does that sound, Cosmic? You know, you
We'll
you
send you a copy.
alone, you alone can keep it. Um,
All right.
all right, you
Hold
you
on.
set up over there?
Sorry, I haven't used the slideshow in like 7 years.
Oh, so yeah, it'll be really simple. Just use the left click and the left arrow key to navigate. Left click will be move forward, left arrow to move back. Um, and you'll be fine. That's all you need. There's more complicated controls, but that's the easiest to remember. Left click, left arrow.
All right. So
And of course,
where
the
do we
first one
start?
is this shot you have of Edward from Full Metal Alchemist. I believe this was while he was in uh, the church. This is when he's creating his spear to fight the chimeras, I believe.
I think this is I think episode 3, I think, for Brotherhood.
Yeah, because episode 1 was in Central, and episode 2 was the full backstory. So yeah, this would have been episode 3. All right.
Yeah. So the first thing, well, I do like alchemy as a system. I do have a couple of discrepancies with it.
Oh
The
yeah,
first one would be that it requires a little bit of background. So as you probably know, when it comes to alchemy, you have to understand what material you're turning something into. And we see throughout the story there are a lot of occasions where the alchemist characters are obviously really intelligent. They're obviously very well studied. So they know how to do things as opposed to just like controlling the earth. Whenever you use alchemy, you both you can deconstruct something and then reconstruct it, reorganize it into basically whatever material you want if you know what you're doing with it. And that's what we see here with Ed. We see it in the 3rd episode. He makes a whole spear out of this material. And directly after this, the guy he's fighting turns his staff into a minigun.
Oh yeah. His cane.
Yeah.
His cane turns into a min- Well, that's where the Philosopher's Stone. Like a normal person can't do that. They'd need like a slab of metal or something.
I'll get to that in a second. My concern is, by episode 3, we've already established that these characters, provided that they have the materials for the exchange, and provided that they know what they're doing, they know what they're turning the thing into, they can just transform it, whether it's sand, whether it's a rock, whether it's ice, whether it's water. As long as they have the material and they know what they're doing after the fact, they can turn it into whatever it is that they want to turn it into. And the problem I have with the story is that there's no tangible reason why characters don't spam this type of thing. 92% of the time, characters are going straight for earthbending every single time. And it's not that I have a problem with that. It could be used in certain situations a little bit better, in my opinion. There's just so much utility that you could get out of a system like this that the vast majority of the time they're not using. And we could arbitrarily decide a couple of excuses if we wanted. We could say, well, it's quote unquote hard to do, in which case we'd have to stratify why. You mentioned a second ago that the reason he's using the Philosopher's Stone, and he's using that to add material, because what the Philosopher's Stone does is it allegedly allows you to get around the concept of equivalent exchange. Problem is that doesn't matter, because to my knowledge, this can work on solids, liquids, and if we're looking at Mustang, probably gas too.
Oh, yeah. So I can explain. They cover that in the manga. So all Mustang is doing is rearranging the air. So he's taking like all the oxygen and making it a straight line to his target, and then bunching it up there. So he's like moving the nitrogen out of the way and putting the oxygen in the way, and then spark from his gloves.
Which is another problem. So they can control air. So as far as I'm concerned, the concept of equivalent exchange and a lot of these issues I'm having really isn't relevant, because the characters always have the material they need.
Well, almost all of organochemistry is just carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen, which is everywhere.
So when it comes to the amount of base material they have access to, it is not a valid excuse for why they don't do crazy things like this. We could also say that, well, it's maybe they have a chance of messing up. Maybe it's really just really difficult or strenuous to do. Unfortunately, we don't see that in the story. Aside from a couple of occasions like this one that we see where things happen relatively slowly for dramatic effect, we've seen characters just make things more or less instantaneously if they want to. There doesn't seem to be any real-time issues when it comes to what they can make. So the problem is, you'd think a lot of the characters were uncreative too. You might even say, well, Isaiah, if you were wanting to make a sword or something, you'd have to understand metallurgy. You'd have to understand how metal works. But the problem is, a lot of these characters either do, or with a level of intelligence that they have and the amount of time they have under their belt, there's no reason they wouldn't be able to learn how to do basic things like this. And that's one of the reasons I have an issue with Mustang specifically. There are a lot of ways you could argue that a person is doing some kind of explosion-style attack, and it doesn't really matter which argument we implement, because they have the base components necessary. I don't think I have, you can argue about how difficult it is, right? But if you can make gas, or if you can make air or fumes or whatever, and you can control these materials with alchemy, then it really doesn't matter. You can just do whatever you want. And the characters almost never do it. And then my other problem is, when it comes to Philosopher's Stones, the writer seems to pretend that having a Philosopher's Stone all of a sudden makes you better at alchemy. Like, characters start kicking behind after they get access to Philosopher's Stones, when anything they can do, as long as they had the material, they could have done the same thing anyway.
Oh yeah, and like Al starts like beating up Kimberly. Like he gets physically stronger against Kimberly from having a Philosopher's
That's
Stone.
another thing I have.
Like he punches
Another
harder.
issue. Yeah. So with, not Ed, what's his, Al.
Alphonse.
So one of the conflicts that we have in the story with Al is that it's a minor conflict. It's not really that big of a deal. He gets torn apart or damaged a couple of times. As you know, he is made of a metal suit. His soul is attached to that piece of metal. And so basically, if he has no more metal, he has no more body. And that was a concern that they had for a hot minute. Every time he got damaged, what his brother would do is he'd use alchemy to thin out the metal in his body and use it to reform the rest of it. When the way I see it, there's no reason he couldn't just use alchemy to make more metal and slap that on him.
Not make more, but like grab a slab and just like merge it with it. Yeah.
I mean, with the information we have,
realistically, he should be doing that anyway.
How Mustang works, he could just grab air out of thin air and turn that into metal if he wanted to. There's nothing stopping.
Well, it's limited by the chemical makeup. So what like Mustang's doing, he's using oxygen as oxygen, right? He's using nitrogen as nitrogen. The way that they explain it is with the recipes, for example, is you need the basic elements. You know, if you have water, then you can cheat and turn it into oxygen gas and hydrogen gas, but you're stuck with just those two things, right? More complicated things, like an apple, you could turn an apple into so much shit. And like the more complicated and big something gets, the more you can do with it. But yeah, you can't just make the metal. The thing is, he doesn't have to use metal though. Like, why not fill his internals with sand or something? Like, he's able to jump, I think it's like 10 feet in the air at one point. Like, weight is clearly not an issue.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, so, yeah, that's another thing I have... That's another thing I have a problem with. The system is so underutilized. There's just so many things that you could do with alchemy. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, from what you're telling me, there seem to be more stipulations in the manga than there is in the anime. And I wouldn't, unfortunately, know anything about that. But even with the information you're giving me, there's still a metric crap ton these characters could do that they just don't do. You see what I'm saying?
I get it.
Kind of weird.
Oh, wait, that's
this next thing I have an issue with. Again, I don't know exactly how it works in the manga. I'm going anime only here. Because even though this is a secondary version of the story, it's still equally important in my mind, because this is the version that you're gonna push out to all of the normal people. That's not an insult to manga readers or anything, but this is the point. This is gonna be the easiest accessible version of this story for every person, for every random person that you know.
Mm-hmm.
The chances of them having watched this series as opposed to have read it is gonna be a lot higher.
Well, guaranteed, yeah.
In this story, the basic exposition of alchemy we get is twofold: deconstruct and reconstruct. That's what the series tells us, starting from episode 2, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe the end of episode 1, I'm not sure. So from what we know about this before any of the story even gets started, is that one of the basic facets of alchemy is to take apart the thing you're controlling before you rearrange it into what you want it to be. Now, let's talk about Scar.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Scar. Now, Scar is not a normal alchemist. Alchemy takes these kind of like magic circles or whatever. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of that. I don't completely understand it myself right now. But his alchemy works like this: the ability to construct and deconstruct, while they both make up the whole of alchemy, his are separate. He has one magic circle on one arm that allows that arm to deconstruct things, and one that allows him to reconstruct things. So this character is kind of a menace. He runs around slapping people and just destroying them, or destroying the environment or whatever. He kind of just goes around beating people up and one-shotting them whenever he gets the chance.
Oh yeah, he
He's
touches you
avoiding
with his right hand and you die.
Yeah, I remember vividly a couple of times he'll just grab someone's face and they'll just not be alive anymore.
That's his introduction. He grabs the I think it's like Blood Iron Alchemist and he blows him up internally.
Yeah, and that's what this scene right here is. With this picture right here is for. It is.
Oh
He
yeah,
can literally
him.
just grab something and be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna deconstruct you."
Yeah, nuke.
And this ends up being probably like the first major loss for the main characters.
Oh yeah.
And one of the things that really annoys me about this series is that there are a lot of things with how alchemy is set up that would be common sense to the people who are skilled in alchemy, but their story pretends that there's these big revelations for Ed. And this is one of them. At least the way the anime gives the exposition, this is a basic process of alchemy he should know. But he's so surprised about this thing this one guy does. Instead of doing the two-step process that alchemy's based off of, he only does the first step from what he can see. And so the writer
the disassembly
tries to
step
make
and then
him-
ignore it, yeah.
Say again?
He does the disassembly step and then just lets them disintegrate.
Yeah.
Which you can like the material doesn't go anywhere. If you look at it, with specifically the Al frame here, the metal's just gone. Like there's scraps flying, but not nearly as much as there is material that's just missing. So he's deleting that energy somehow.
Okay.
And someone in chat actually sent me a relevant thing. Wouldn't you still be limited by energy output if you wish to create something? And the answer is no. At one point, when Maze Hughes' wife is undergoing labor, Ed slaps his hand on a bucket of water and makes it boil. Like that's creating heat from nothing.
All right, so I did get a comment in my sorry about that. Does this hold on, does this whatchamacallit actually like is mine even working? I don't see anything in here.
So mine's working. Like I've had both messages pop up in my ears.
Interesting. Oh well. Well, I have my phone open so I can cover this comment here.
Yeah.
Any specific transmutation requires specific knowledge. Even with the door of truth stuff that bypasses having to draw circles, other characters can't perform alchemy without the notes.
You need to understand the basics of the technique, but creating an explosion isn't hard. Nitrogen makes up like 70% of air, and the strongest chemical explosive we've ever made, chemical explosive, is made out of just nitrogen. It's called azidoazide. It's pure nitrogen.
It's one of those things that I try to avoid talking about because eventually I'm gonna have to make a full-blown, probably hour-long video on Full Metal Alchemist, both the good and the bad, like explaining everything. So I didn't want to just like blow the whole thing like right now. But this is one of those things I noticed when I started my rewatch, which was a lot of the people's magic circles are very, very different. But aside from a couple of specialized characters and a couple of specialized things, like for example, later in the series, the magic circle that they use to deconstruct the Philosopher's Stone, it's implied, and we also see in the second episode, the backstory for the two boys. We see that I have a screenshot and everything. Did I ever post that? I don't think I did, but I meant to bring that up like a month ago. But even the two main characters themselves, Ed and Al, you see in their backstory that they use two separate, although very similar, magic circles. So everybody's magic circle in this story is different, and while the story would probably have you believe that each individual character's, circle like does some specific function, I don't think we see enough evidence for that with the vast majority of characters.
Or break down atoms, since that
Well,
also
We just get
creates
straight
heat.
earthbending most of the time.
So the thing is, most of the characters who do earthbending have seen the Door of Truth. The only other ones I can think of off the top of my head that do it are Scar, who's using the creation step, and Armstrong, who does have his own circle on his fist gauntlet things.
Right.
I think Olivia Armstrong also does it. I don't remember how. But that's during the attack by King Bradley. Yeah, the blonde lady.
Refresh my memory. It's been a second. Yeah, yeah, okay. The one who beat Armstrong in the fight, right?
Right. But like earthbending is usually people who've seen the Dormishers. They just clap their hands, touch the ground,
From my
earthbend.
perspective, it doesn't really change much because the story is responsible for showing us how much these things matter. If the writer isn't doing a good job of showing us what these magic circles mean,
Oh, I
then
agree
that's
completely.
on the writer.
Yeah.
It's too ambiguous, which is another thing I want to talk about. And this is something I even have made as a mistake myself when I first started, like 3 years ago when I first started doing my podcast. I mentioned something because I hadn't watched Full Metal Alchemist yet. I mentioned that people refer to Avatar The Last Airbender and Full Metal Alchemist
What about
when they
energy
talk about hard
exchange?
magic systems. This magic system is not hard. That's not an insult. This system is not hard.
Okay,
It's a
so
relatively soft system when you think about it.
I'm getting more comments relating to the water thing from a minute ago. So I'll just go through all three really quick before addressing them.
Okay.
The heat probably came from the friction between atoms or breakdown atoms, since that also creates heat. And what about energy exchange? No, nothing lost any mass. The water didn't like shrink. There wasn't steam, right? He didn't like blow up anything. He didn't create a fire. He just generated heat. And other people do the opposite. People freeze water. That's shown in episode 1 of Brotherhood. I remember watching that with
Yeah,
you.
yeah. That guy was
Um,
like he's like the water alchemist. He specializes in water, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, and he's able to just turn a ton of water, like an entire city's worth of space of water, into ice like it's nothing.
Yeah. Which small tangent, another thing I wanted to bring up that I had to go back and watch it to make sure I had it right. This is actually a good thing because I was concerned about that before. Sometimes writers don't do a good job of showing like the upper limits of what a character is capable of with the magic in one go. And while we don't exactly see that in Full Metal Alchemist, unfortunately, we do get something that's actually kind of close. The plot of that first episode is that character making a bunch of tiny alchemy circles to destroy the city. He turned those into a big one because the city was too big. So whatever size magic circles he had, we don't know exactly what their range is, but we know it's relatively limited, all things considered, if he had to put so many into the city.
I think he had like 12. And if he'd gotten all of them, it would have created one the size of the city. So,
Yeah.
well, I mean, each one is still creating like a glacier.
A lot. Yeah, you're right. A lot. But at least we
Um,
kind of have hints now on exactly what the range of these circles are, other than just saying quote unquote it's hard or you have to be skilled or something.
you can't just like draw one on the ground and affect something on the other side of the planet.
Yeah, that's like steroid alchemy, Jesus alkahestry level stuff right there.
Yeah, I
There's
don't
another
think.
thing I like about Full Metal Alchemist. I have some discrepancies, but I don't mind the idea of different cultures coming to understand alchemy in a different way and evolving it into different directions.
Oh
I
yeah,
think that was pretty interesting.
so one of the cool notes there in alchemy, working on people is like forbidden because people keep using it in like, hey, let's revive people ways. Whereas alkahestry is regularly used to heal people, but they don't try to use it on people who are already dead, so they never see the major consequences.
Oh no, I got a comment. It's disheartening.
Okay,
Worth mentioning that the water guy is filler.
he's not the only guy to do ice stuff though.
But this second part, though, yeah, alchemists draw power power for transmutation from tectonic activity. Alchemy uses. Sorry, the like button is in the way. I can't see the rest of that.
It says ley
Ley
lines. Ley lines, yeah.
All right. So, question, just to make sure I got this: what is the difference between the ley lines and the tectonic activity? So, like, are they connected, or is that like a completely different force of nature?
So they're both forces of nature. My understanding of
Because
it
if I'm not
is
mistaken in the story,
is
one of the issues
The
that
the ley
character
lines are
was
pretty
having.
universal. Tectonic activity fluctuates, so the strength of alchemy isn't consistent, whereas alchemy pretty much is. Like it's a fixed amount, right?
But with the water
Yeah.
being
So what
turned
was that
into
little
ice as
girl's name? I can't
possible,
remember her
if you
for the
compress
life
water
of me.
with extreme
I'm not
pressure,
good
it
at
turns
remembering
into ice
characters'
6.
names, unfortunately.
Ice 6 can't be maintained without an atmosphere, Emma. Don't do this. Don't do this.
So the crap, the lady from China, the girl from China. I remember when she was talking to Scar, she was trying to figure out where the Elric brothers were, and she ended up mentioning that she had felt put off by the country that they were in because for some reason, just the nature of the power in that area felt fundamentally different.
That's because it
So
was,
I
yeah.
think, yeah, I think the tectonic energy
still
has something to
possible.
do with it. I don't think it's. I'm not sure if it's that simple, unfortunately.
Yeah. We don't actually get too many details on alkahestry, so because like Alphonse goes off to learn the secrets of alkahestry at the end of the series, but we don't actually get to see his progress. So maybe that's a good like sequel series, or we could do like a video speculating and like coming up with a whole new magic system. That'd be cool. But we should probably get moving. The next slide was Armstrong, the glorious bastard him.
In hindsight, I should have put him back here somewhere, but that's besides the point. That's besides the point.
Yeah, it's probably related to like the earthbending stuff you were talking about,
Yeah,
and the
the
circles.
earthbending stuff.
We can skip past him if you want, but I have one note.
What's that?
It's implied that the speed at which the alchemy comes out, like the earthbending alchemy comes out, is related to how hard he punches things, which makes no sense, especially
Theory.
especially when he gets outperformed by end of series Edward, who is nowhere near as strong as Armstrong. Like don't at me, people who like hype Edward. Armstrong is physically stronger. I don't care what you say. Um,
Wow, I'm not gonna lie. I put this slide together all the way wrong. Now, this next thing I want to talk about.
what slide are you on? What slide are you on?
Let me check my notes. I'm sorry about that.
We can go on whatever order you want, man. It's just a theory, an anime theory. Yeah.
Oh yeah, this is something that honestly is. This is something you think characters would exploit a lot more.
What's
It's
that?
really interesting. It's interesting, but it also brings up some kind of weird discrepancies for the characters that do the earthbending thing I was talking about.
Oh yeah.
Now, so in this scene right here, I forget what chapter that maybe episode
So
25 or something like that.
this is while they're at the wall, bordering one of the countries they're at war with.
Yeah. So Elric gets
Briggs.
into a fight with this guy. He's got this metal arm with the weird saw claw thing. He gets to fighting him. Now at this point in the story, what Edward doesn't know is that his automail can't keep up with the weather. It wasn't built to operate in such cold temperatures. So at this point in the story, it starts to malfunction. What this guy has is a completely arm made of a completely different type of metal. If I'm not mistaken, it's like duralumin and copper or something like that.
There's a slide we actually have in here that talks about it. An automail made with
I just wanted to pretend I
duraluminum,
was
carbon
capable of remembering
fiber,
things.
nickel, and copper. Well, the thing is, the metal shouldn't work. Like the kind of metal you make the armament out of doesn't matter. What should matter is like the mechanisms for movements. Like any hydraulics would need to be adjusted. Any like cabling might need to be adjusted. Maybe the parts that connect to the nerves need to be adjusted because when it gets cold, those things can shrink, which would be very painful. But like the actual arm shouldn't start like breaking down or anything. Like the metal's not gonna get weaker. I don't know what they're on
Yeah.
about.
I agree with that. That's something that I was kind of confused about. But my thing is this. So in order to cut the fight short, Ed tries to use alchemy on his arm. It
Right.
doesn't work. He loses the fight. Now in this scene, we learn why his alchemy didn't work on it. And the reason is It's because he thought it was a specific metal. He thought it was iron or steel or whatever, and because he used his alchemy on the material and didn't know what it was, therefore the alchemy failed. Saying that you have to not only know what the product or result you're trying to get out of the alchemy, but also that you have to know, or at least have some understanding of the material itself that you're using alchemy on in order for it to work.
He could have just done the Scar thing. Destroy
Here's the
it.
problem with that. Here's the problem with that. This is the fight with Scar after that. He uses this trick on Scar after he gets his arm upgraded to the Duralumin arm that can operate in the cold. He gets into a fight with Scar, and he goes in for a punch on Scar with the metal arm. If I'm not mistaken, he says something along the lines of, "Oh, you're just gonna give up your metal arm to me, huh? Okay." And he hits that arm, it doesn't work. He says, "Sorry, it's not made out of steel anymore. You don't know what metal this is, so you can't break it. And it doesn't work anymore."
This is really dumb. But at least at least they're consistent with it. That's okay.
But yeah.
But at that point, the dominant strategy against Scar should just be to wear, for Alphonse especially, should just be to like use a ton of different metals.
Do all of these characters to which this criticism would apply, to which this is relevant, would any of them really just know every single metal? Like, if we're giving suspension of disbelief, maybe they just know what maybe all dirt is mostly the same in every region of the country or whatever. Fine, I can get over that. But everything else, I've got concerns. I don't see how this fits into the broader picture. I get that the fact that the writer used the setup and payoff or whatever, but this is another one of those circumstances where...
Oh my god, wait. Ed transformed stone? But stone isn't one thing, and he uses like 7 or 8 different kinds of stone. Some of which are from countries he's never even been before.
Sorry, are you talking to me or are you talking to...
No, I'm talking to you. Like I'm realizing if alchemy requires you to understand the chemical makeup of something, he shouldn't know the chemical makeup of the sandstone in the church. Honestly. He shouldn't know what that's made out of.
That's why I said suspension of disbelief. Like, if we just assumed all dirt was the same dirt.
I mean, you can say that with dirt. You can try and excuse that with dirt, but stone. There's so many different kinds of stone.
That's what I'm saying. So you're telling me that... Oh my god. Does Scar know what people's faces are made of? Does he have like a list or something? Because the interesting thing with Scar is...
Did he steal the
trade as being...
Did he steal the Ed Elric brothers' notes on the human body?
Like this. All right. He just remembers all of that. Is what he just knows all that. He's
apparently
that guy. His brain is that big.
He's him.
Yeah, because these
characters. He's not even a scientist. He's a soldier. He's not an alchemist. He's a soldier. He was given the arm.
That's what I'm saying. The only reason I thought his abilities worked up until this point was because it was just something he could automatically activate, and he didn't have to understand alchemy to use it. Now they're telling us he has to follow the rules anyway. This doesn't make any sense.
That is so terrible. I never thought that through. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that relates to another thing. The greed slide we have up here, you won't even be able to scratch me. He tells Edward what his armor is made out of. He tells him it's made out of carbon.
Yep. Yes. He tells him it's made out of carbon.
If you need to know what it's made out of, why would he say that? That's he couldn't have lost.
Closer research, it looks like this character doesn't know how alchemy works. So I'm gonna say that in his defense, you should never just tell people how your ability works unless you're going for the gambler route. You know, this isn't like Jujutsu Kaisen, but like. So I can give him a pass on that. He's just stupid.
Okay, that's fair. Greed does a lot of stupid shit in this series.
He can't actually fight that well. He probably just worse than we give him credit.
Does he win a fight? I think the only fight he wins is against Ed's mentor. Does he win another fight the whole series?
I think he gets absorbed. He tries to absorb the guy with the tight eyes. I'm sorry, I can't remember these characters' names.
From the other country, yeah.
He wants to get the Philosopher's Stone,
Not
And they were
Mifune,
like, hey, we can
not
absorb you in here, but you'll probably
um,
die. He was like, do it. And eventually he just took over. I can't remember what happened after that.
I can't remember his name. It starts with an L. I remember that. Was it Lee?
I think it's Lee. I think it's Lee.
Something like that. All right. Well, other slides we haven't addressed. No wonder I couldn't destroy it. I assume that relates to your earlier point.
Yeah.
Oh, and the Philosopher's Stone, the little bottle with the.
Real quick, but
That was
real quick
Marco's,
before we
right?
get to that.
Oh yeah. Go
So
ahead.
real quick. So the reason I put this slide in here, I was trying to find earlier today the other slide that this was supposed to pair with. I couldn't unfortunately find it, so I'm just gonna have to explain it to you. So what happens is this is another one of those examples of the story trying to have Ed have a revelation during a fight that makes him better down the line as a setup and payoff when this information should have been more obvious to him. The reason that this guy's armor is impenetrable, he doesn't actually have alchemy for some reason. As a homunculi, this is just a part of his ability. He can control the carbon in his body and make it into armor. And one of the reasons that this is supposed to be so special is because carbon is like the strongest material ever or something. Like it's supposed to be super durable or whatever.
So you can arrange it to be durable, like graphite is terrible, but graphene. Wait, is it? Yeah, graphene is amazing. You know, diamonds are great. Wood isn't particularly great. Paper is terrible. You know.
Right.
You have a
Carbon
lot
is
of
in
flexibility.
everything.
You have a lot of
Yes,
flexibility.
carbon is in basically everything.
All of
It's
organochemistry,
supposed to make
yeah.
it really durable. Now, so by
Yeah,
seeing this, if I'm not mistaken, I'm trying to find out what episode this was in. Hold on a second, just to make sure I got.
It wasn't that far. Low double digits. Here I can just
Give me
Google
like 2
this.
seconds. You can go ahead and make an
What
additional comment.
episode does Edward fight Greed? 34. Oh, that's the 2003 series. 62. That's not the one I'm looking for. No, that's another one that's later. Is this it? Well, that's the right fight. But it's not telling me what episode this is. $34. No, that's still the 2003 series.
No, sorry. So what I'm saying is, I'm pretty sure Ed used this technique later down the line, but I can't unfortunately figure out which episode that was in. That's what I was looking for earlier. So I don't really want to speak on that if I can't find the episode, because I could just be remembering it wrong.
I don't remember him using Greed's specific technique at any point.
So let's just skip forward then.
The big
I'll
thing
probably
with
just
Greed's
cover-
thing is if you encased yourself in like graphene, you wouldn't be able to move. Like Greed can move because he can control it, but like a normal person would just be a statue.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, he just used it in his arm.
No, he can cover his whole body. He can
I'm talking
freely
about-
manipulate
I'm
it
talking
any
about
time.
Ed when he used the technique. But again, I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
remember what episode that's in, so I don't want to speak on that.
Yeah, well,
If I can't remember the exact particulars.
yeah, that makes sense. All right, so that just leaves the Philosopher's Stone, unless you got anything else to add.
I do not have anything else to add.
Okay, so
Also, for the sake of time, I'm gonna skip my issue with the Philosopher's Stone. I'll talk about that in the video as well.
Okay. So then the next one on the list was Avatar: The Last Airbender. We have some stuff on water bending, lightning bending, and energy bending. Starting with the moon. You're the one who chose this one, pal. What's up?
Hold on a second. Now I have to bring up my notes on that. You know, in hindsight, it wasn't a good idea to put all of mine in the front. I think it's better if we take
You got another person in chat here. I assume that's Ace, the face. Hey bro, I just recently saw your video on Naruto's magic system. and I enjoyed it so much that I started watching all your Magic System Monday videos from the beginning. I'm 2 videos in so far.
Oh, disclaimer. All those videos at the beginning, those are just adaptations from my podcast. I don't do podcast anymore. All my podcast content is not only very old, but it's also very, very dusty.
Yeah.
Just have it, like,
He's been getting better. Yeah.
Whatever you expect from my videos now, they are not the same back in the day.
Yeah. And I don't have any videos on my channel on this subject yet. So it's just this stream if you ever come onto my side. I make music and play video games. That's what I do.
All right. Because I've been yapping for so long, do you want to just skip to one of yours and we can just take turns?
Dusty and crusty.
I mean, I have a lot of notes on Avatar: The Last Airbender. I just don't have anything on the moon. So if you want to just like cover the moon first before I get to my monologues.
That's the case of me putting the slides in improper order. Like I said, I haven't used slides since like the 10th grade.
No, that's cool. All right. Well, we'll just skip ahead to bloodbending because I have a lot of notes on bloodbending.
Okay. So I do have a number of issues with. Well, I'm gonna start with this. I like Avatar: The Last Airbender with its magic system. I like the fact that it's a nice blend of hard magic and soft magic. There's a lot of power in here that comes from technical skill, right? But there's also things that come from your ability to spiritually, mentally, philosophically evolve and adapt. And I really like that. But we do have a couple of issues, and I really want to focus on waterbending's issues specifically, although Terminus is going to talk about some of the other elements as well, because we have issues with those. Now, the first thing I want to talk about with waterbending is the fact that it's kind of unintentionally overpowered, and it's not just because it has bloodbending in it, because technically that only happens once a night. One of the problems with waterbending is the fact that it's the element that in theory should fluctuate in power level the most. It should go up and down in power, with what we're told, depending on the phases of the moon. There are a couple of problems with this. One, if you've ever watched Avatar, like just watch it again, you'll see this is really interesting. I've seen some YouTubers talk about this. 75% of the episodes have a full moon in them whenever it's nighttime.
Or it's like a couple days from full moon. It's never like a waxing moon.
Yeah. So another thing to think about is the fact that we never get to see the change in power with waterbenders. We know that they're stronger at night than they are during the day because of the moon, and we also know that the fuller the moon is, the stronger they are. But aside from that one time that the time of day was highlighted in season 1 when Katara was fighting Prince Zuko to get Aang back, the only other occasion of the moon being relevant in terms of its phases is when Katara learns bloodbending. So we never get to see any meaningful fluctuation in the power level that honestly could have made up for some of the issues that I have with this with waterbending.
Well, to clarify on that, we do see the power fluctuate, but the problem is we only ever actually see it go up. We don't see it go down. We never see them nerfed.
We can't see it going up without it going down, because we don't have enough of a point of reference. We have the average, and then we have Katara bloodbending, and then people sucking water out of plants. We don't know we don't know enough of the difference in terms of scaling.
That's fair.
So seeing the lower end of it or seeing things get weaker would have been the context necessary to show, the difference in strength from when it goes up and it goes down. What do they look like when the new moon happens?
There's never a new moon.
Exactly. We get one every month. Actually, let me stop talking. I don't know how moon phases work. I'm sorry.
No, we get one every. It's 28 days.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah. So we get a new moon every 28 days, so and in the show, it never once happens. I remember at least one waxed moon. A waned moon where it's like a crescent, but we never get to. There's never a point where it's a full moon. A new moon. Yeah.
All right. right, so let's talk about blood bending now
Blood
and
bending.
plant bending. I'm gonna talk about plant bending a little bit, and I'm gonna let you take over for blood bending because I know you wanted to talk about that.
Oh yeah.
I
Well,
understand that a lot of people don't consider the plant bending to be its own unique type of bending, but when it comes to the level of utility that water benders have, this is one they do have a metric crap ton of it. When it comes to their their ability to heal, the actual ability, they have ice. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But then they have the plant bending, which in theory makes sense. And especially when it comes to things like seaweed or swamp vines or whatever. But my problem is, on average, most plants have a very high concentration of water. That's almost, interestingly enough, comparable to the concentration of water in the human body. It's not exactly the same. Difference of about 7 to 10% depending on who you talk to or who you consult. But they're very high up there. They're very close. So for plant bending to be something that you can do as long as you have enough plants versus blood bending only being possible during a full moon doesn't make sense to me.
Oh, so that's actually a chi
Because
thing.
even
So
if
the plants
plant
aren't
bending would be a little
resisting
bit
it.
easier,
The plants aren't
here's
resisting
the
it. The
problem with
people
that.
are.
When we say resistance, does the series de facto prove this, or is this something
No,
that we're bringing
Katara.
up to justify?
Katara resists Hama. Yeah, so
Elaborate
she
on
talks
things
about
that
the
resist it.
strength of her bending, which is referring to the chi which they manipulate to do their bending, which we get a little bit of elaboration on thanks to it's the acrobat villain.
The chi blocker lady.
Yeah, why can't I remember her name? She's adorable. Shit. I remember Mai's name. Why can't I remember hers? She's so much better as a character.
I can't remember her name either, unfortunately. I'm pretty bad at that.
For some reason, my brain keeps saying Judy, but Judy is a very different character. Anyway,
Is that the Boston Say chick? Who is that?
no, that's Judy is
Ty
Varric's
Lee?
girl.
Ty
Ty
Lee.
Lee, that's it. Thank you. Yes, Ty Lee is the chi blocker.
Mr. The Face. How do I pronounce that? Is that
I
Ase or
appreciate
Ace?
that. I said Ace when I was reading out his name earlier, and he didn't comment on it. So hopefully I was right. Anyway,
Oh, you said about that chi resisting thing.
so your chi flows throughout your body, and it's think of it like chakra in Naruto, right? You have these points throughout your body that
I know about the
it
meridians.
moves
I
across.
get
Yeah,
that.
meridians.
So, like, just okay.
So, bloodbending to control something needs to be able to get into you and manipulate things inside of you. If your chi is sufficiently strong, they can't get a grab on it. So if you're unconscious, for example, a bloodbender can manipulate you no problem. If you're conscious,
Where does Ty Lee
it takes some
explain
effort.
this?
So Ty Lee doesn't explain this specifically, but they talk about the strength of bending and how it can be blocked. And then through some dialogue
they
with
talk
the
about that?
Earthbenders and Katara. So this is Bossing Say the Wall, and the first episode where chi blocking is introduced, which is Return to Omashu.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You're saying she says that bending can be resisted. Is that correct?
So the context of this is that the strength of your bending is based on your chi, and that people have different levels of it. It's inference that you can resist it until Katara, who says that her bending is sufficiently strong to resist Hama's blood bending. So that's when we get confirmation that that's how it works.
Which
But
is
that's also the
interesting because-
introduction of blood bending. So I think that's
Because
fitting.
with a lot of the information that we have in the series, it seems to be, at least with a lot of the information that they give us, that the strength of a person's bending is defined with how well they correlate to the actual spiritual qualities of the bending itself.
Yeah. So building up your chi is part of that. Like how spiritual you are, you can get more of it.
Alright.
Physical strength matters for like your own personal dexterity, but bending is chi. right? So that's how
Right, it
like
is chi,
Boomy is able
and they control that chi through.
to lift so much shit.
Right.
And it's also why being old isn't necessarily a disadvantage in a fight in this context, because your physical body isn't
But what
linked
I'm
to your
saying
chi.
is that each of the elements have spiritual or philosophical implications of not only
Yeah.
how good you can be at them, but how strong they are, independent of any generic concept of chi strength.
Right.
Now, don't get me wrong, there's the whole idea of spirituality, and in theory, that could enhance a person's chi or whatever, but none of the other elements, even anything outside of bloodbending and probably maybe healing, seem to have any real correlation with that information, at least from the way it's being explained to me now.
The raw amount of stuff you can move, like the sheer volume of your bending, does correlate with chi. That's part of how the Avatar is able to overpower other benders just flatly in their own element.
Mm.
Like look at Aang's water bending output compared to other people. Like he's not a natural waterbender. He isn't even a master,
Yeah,
according to
He's
Paku.
just good at controlling
He's just
chi
good.
because he's done it for so long.
Right, and he's the Avatar, so he has so much of it, right? Like he has the most of anybody. So he's able to capsize ships, which is something that even Katara, as a master, wasn't able to do until the third book.
Okay, I think I see what you're saying here.
And like he's creating tsunamis and stuff. He creates a tornado indoors during the first season. Like his output is insane. That's just based on the chi differences there.
Interesting. Chi differences.
Yeah, so related to blend bending though is my ultimate problem, which isn't in the original series. Katara and Hama, I think, is fine. The full moon limitation is fine. Not only do they break the full moon limitation in Korra, but they make it psychic. You doesn't even have to move to use blood bending. Like all three of the guys to the right of Hama can stand completely still and knock you unconscious. And actually related to that, Magic and I briefly discussed before the stream started about bloodbending. If you take control of someone's blood, they should just instantly die.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't even have to do anything.
Blood specifically, you could just control most of their body because it has liquid in it.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking liquid volume, then you'd control the brain most especially. Like mind control, that'd be broken. But like just stopping your blood for even a second, even if you stop all of it simultaneously, so there's not like massive blood clots or aneurysms, you're dead. Like instantly, you just
it's that
dead.
Like instant blood clot.
They should be killing these people by accident by trying to do something else. They should just they fall over dead. So, any other notes on bloodbending right now?
I'm kind of reluctant to bring up Korra, because Korra is like a whole other.
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to stick mostly to Avatar. That's why I didn't bring in like the giant spirits or anything.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, they really ruined the spirits in Korra, didn't they?
Oh my god, they really did. I wouldn't have minded. So here's the thing. I would not have minded most of the spirit stuff if they didn't do good evil. It should have been order chaos. Because order and chaos are not good evil, right? A firm dictatorship is ordered. And you need chaos to get rid of it, right? The Earth Queen, who is we can agree is evil within the context of Korra, lived in order. She maintained order within her civilization, and chaos would have been needed to change that. Now, Zahir did it in a really stupid way, but we're going to ignore that. Chaos was required, right? Now, you can't have Vaatu running rampant and, like, destroying the world and shit, because that's what he's, like, looking for, and that's what his presence alone would cause. But what would have been really cool is the Avatar being like, you know what, you're right, and just absorbing Vaatu as well. Like, that would have been fucking awesome.
Yeah, I got a couple of comments here from Ace. It was Ace, right? Ace the Face?
Yeah.
Aang's earthbending was very, very shoddy in the beginning because it's so opposite to his nature, and had to slowly learn to control it over time when training with Toph. He
Oh yeah,
also says
you can
for
actually
is
see
essentially
uh,
a huge sorry, the like button gets in the way of the
a
text. A
huge
huge
freaking
freaking
retcon.
retcon.
Yeah.
I agree
Uh,
with that.
related
Korra,
to
when I
Aang's
review
earthbending.
them, I when I
Um,
review them,
go
I
ahead.
largely consider Avatar and Korra two completely separate series. Kinda asterisk marks there, but
Similar
otherwise
but
the score for
different.
Avatar would be so bad because
Oh
it
yeah, no, no.
contradicts so
So
much.
much so much
And the
shit.
sad part is a lot of the things it contradicts, it doesn't even like okay, you could say a lot of people will give people a pass when they make inconsistencies or have a break in logic if they're using that to build something that's worth it.
Something awesome.
Did they build something awesome out of it? Did they turn this negative thing into an advantage? And
Oh yeah,
unfortunately, I feel
Zahir
like they
being able to
didn't.
just fly, that was worth it. That was awesome. Even though it broke convention. Like, why couldn't Aang do that?
Yeah, it broke convention terribly. I'm gonna go ahead on the record and say
Oh,
now that flying being the advanced bending style of airbending was really crappy to me. It just didn't.
really?
It didn't feel right. If this was some other ambiguous system, like if it was some kind of cultivation style spiritual thing where they said meditate and he gained the ability to fly, I'd be fine with that. But not only is it lackluster compared to what benders have access to now, it's something that an airbender could already do with minor concessions or with minor
The
preparation.
glider,
You see what
the
I'm saying?
tornadoes. Yeah, no, I get that. So I wanted
It's
to go
a
back to Aang's earthbending because there's actually a note most people don't catch. His early earthbending isn't just earthbending. Like when he's on the train and he's like moving the rocks around, he's both earthbending and airbending. You can actually see that he's using air to like help position the rock, and there's airbending and earthbending when he's cutting them as well. He's doing
I've heard
both.
I've heard people argue that he does that with waterbending too, but I'm not exactly sure.
Sometimes. Most of the time, it's just waterbending. Like when he's making the giant wave in front of Katara, that's just waterbending. There's no air
But yeah,
visible.
his earthbending was pretty weak in the beginning.
Yeah, and he did
That's another
airbending
thing,
assists on that. Yeah.
and that's one of those things when it comes to the key to being stronger at bending. And this is one of the things that I really liked until I heard that chi thing that honestly made me really disappointed. If that's true, it's gonna come out of the score a little bit, because one of the values that Avatar shows us as a system is that it's not just about how powerful you are. Being strong or like having this special quality about yourself, there are some times where this is contradicted now, obviously. But the thing about Avatar is that you have to play by the rules, regardless of whatever element it is. There's this specific identity. You can add to that identity in a way that is not contradictory, but you have to embody that identity, that philosophy, that spirituality in order to get it to work. Which is why, not a, which is why people from different nations are good at bending. Aside from the fact that that bending only comes from their nation, the reason that they're so proficient in it anyway is because those nations and the people as a whole represent those qualities, at least in theory. And that's what allows them to make best use of that element.
I can
And
get
so when it
behind that.
comes to Aang, so of course his earthbending was weak because the philosophical, the spiritual quality that it takes to make strong earthbending is not something that was very strong within him.
That's
And of
still
course there are
true.
things where you could argue, and there's some. It's less true is the problem. It's less true.
Well, it's a
Now
proportional
we can
thing.
talk about the ability to control chi and going through the motions. I don't have a problem with that. It makes sense that he's better at that. He's had so much training, and he's literally the Avatar. I'm not worried about that.
Okay.
But yeah, minor side note. Another thing that I found very interesting, the exception to what I'm talking about, at least to a very limited extent, is firebending. And the neat thing about firebending is that your ability to use yourself as a source of energy, even if you use the wrong one, if you're not firebending properly, you can still draw upon sources of power that make your bending strong, even if you're not doing it right. And I feel like that was a very neat exception when it comes to fire as an element. It kind of fits the theme of it as like the element of power. Bit of a
Well,
tangent, sorry.
element of energy, but yeah. Actually, speaking of energy, we have a slide here for ice. Which I think relates to something very interesting. We kind of covered it with Full Metal Alchemist, but they can create and destroy heat at will, which is insanely broken.
And this is another one of those things when I was talking about water bending really being stacked when you stop to think about it. There's just so much it can do. Now, don't get me wrong. Like all the elements have things that are useful, but it's like water bending, even though you can go into each individual subcategory of water bending and justify why it's a part of the bigger picture, the overall result is that water bending is kind of unnecessarily stacked in a lot of awkward ways that don't make it super overpowered, but it's just weird. It's just kind of weird for the
Okay.
system.
Okay, so going through, we have cloud bending, snow bending, ice bending, water bending, plant bending, blood bending, healing, which is a form of chi
Yeah,
manipulation.
I'll get to that in a
Uh,
second. That makes me so
steam.
mad.
You can use steam to effectively firebend, um, which actually ends up happening later while they're draining a volcano. Why is there water in a volcano?
I don't know. But even with a lot of those, you can kind of like justify them to an extent. Ice, you can as well. But the problem with ice is when you compare it to other kind of secondary forms of bending, not the advanced forms like blood bending or lightning bending or whatever, but just like, for example, with earthbenders, they have that. If there's like mud or slurry, they can control that. That's not in the grand scheme of things comparatively as useful as ice bending. They have sand bending, right? But the vast majority of the time, sand bending is extremely circumstantial in its usefulness. Even if we want to get in the weeds and and argue about circumstances, in the grand scheme of things, aside from the desert, there's not really much you can do with sand bending that you couldn't just do with normal earth bending, on top of the
Well,
fact that sand bending is an
um,
entirely separate skill that has to be mastered on its own. Being a master earthbender in terms of normal earth will not save you from losing a fight if you're sand bending. And we saw that with Toph. Not just because she can't see as well, but she even mentioned in season 3 that she had to practice her sand bending to get better with it. Though it wasn't just about the fact that she can't see, her sand bending is fundamentally worse than her earth bending because they're so different in terms of how you control them.
well,
With
I,
ice
I
bending,
wanna,
we
I,
don't
I
have any
wanna
plot points to
get.
suggest that it's that much harder to control, and they kind of just do it. Even before Katara gets training, she uses ice bending. For example, the episode with the water scroll, and even though it was I think I showed that in the meta video. I'm not exactly sure,
Oh
but
yeah,
yeah,
she
it was a
she
very small
flexes her
thing.
hands behind her and like instinctively freezes the guy.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, there's that. It was like episode 1 or 2, but in the water scroll, she kind of like off to the side before she gets any full training, or before she even uses the water scroll to learn how to do the water whip, for example. She's running away from the bandits, and she takes a bit of water, throws it on a puddle, and she like freezes it over. So she's already, before she actually has any actual training, she's using ice bending at least to some limited extent. So it's not that hard in the grand scheme of things compared to any of the other secondary forms of bending that we see that are relevant.
Wait,
Too
lava
easy.
bending?
Lava bending, that's a whole separate thing. We can talk about lava bending in 2 separate categories if you want. There's the I'm the avatar, so I'm combining elements. And then there's Korra
Mm. So
deciding that lava is just a subcategory. Like I said, I'm not going to talk about Korra. That's going to be a whole hot mess.
no, I get that. Ace the Face is going on about how water bending is just manipulating the makeup of water. I don't think it's a heat issue. It is a heat issue. So you can compress water into ice, type 6, but that's not stable. So the second you're not bending it anymore, it will break apart.
Okay, I
Um,
do see what it's saying though, and I kind of agree with them. Now the weird thing about ice bending when it comes to temperature is that the writers never address the mechanics or the implications of being able to do it. This is something that they
they
probably could
do
have.
they do both. Again, it's the Full Metal Alchemist thing. They have them able to do it both ways, and then don't explore the consequences of that. They
Yeah,
just have it
don't
that
explore
way.
the consequences. They just have
Like
it that way, which is a
being
thing.
able to heat up water is devastating because there's water in the air, something Katara knows. So you could just like clasp your hands and douse someone in steam with the water around them. Just
My
boil them
problem is,
alive
for the
instantly.
most part, you have to acknowledge though, for the most part, what the problem is here is the writers don't behave as though you can just make boiling hot water. This is not the move Scald from Pokemon. They're not just shooting people. I might be forgetting something actually. Does that actually happen?
No. The only time scalding water is brought up is the boiling rock.
Okay, so even though in theory this would be an implication of the power, in the writers' minds, they don't seem to be able to heat things up. We could argue that those things are linked and the ramifications suggest that they should be able to, but it doesn't seem to actually be the case with the powers. My other problem is the exact inverse. The problem is they can, in order for them to be able to make ice out of water, I've thought about it. This has kept me up at night before. This has kept me up at night. Because I don't think they're making hot ice. I don't think they're doing that.
No, it's
If
cold.
that's the case, they have to be able to make the cold. I'm not going to get into the pedantry of it or whatever, but the fact that they can do that is... I don't even know where to start with that.
They're destroying molecular energy. That's what they're doing. They're destroying molecular energy. Or absorbing it, alternatively.
And this is one thing we have to be very, very, very careful with. Because the problem with things like this, with both Full Metal Alchemist
No.
and
Ace
Avatar
the face. They can control individual water
No,
molecules
let
in
me
the air.
finish. Let me
Katara
finish.
does
The
that.
problem is...
So does
problem
Hama.
Wait, say that one more time?
So both Hama and Katara control the individual water molecules in the air. Like, Ace the Face was... I assume that was in response to my
Yeah,
talk
so you're
about
saying-
boiling someone alive. They can do that.
When is this? So it's outside of a place that was already hot. Is that correct?
Yeah, Hama pulls water out of thin air, freezes it, and then shoots it in a slash that slices straight through stone.
All right, so we're talking about the old lady waterbender chick?
Yeah, Hama. And Katara learns to do that. Right? It's a very small amount of water, but you can still manipulate its heat and kill somebody with it.
Okay.
And boiling
Just to
water
make sure we're on the same page here.
happens.
Are you talking about the
Katara.
ability to create hot water or cold ice? Which one are we talking
So
about?
in this case, in Hama's case, it was cold ice. But we know Katara can heat water. A, because she can melt ice into water. But also
The same
because
thing
of
before.
the Blind Bandit episode where she boils a pot of water with waterbender.
This is why I said let me finish. The problem is the level of science that we're trying to use, even though this is the level of science that is required to make sense of the system, this is not the level of science that the story operates on. So there's gonna be a massive divergence of our interpretation of what's going on and what the system's interpretation of itself is. That's the problem. So and this happens with lightning bending too, where people say, how does that actually work? What is this? What are these positive and negative energies? And a lot of people will try to justify it with like science, which may or may not be true. The problem is, regardless of whether or not this implication has to be the case, just like I talked about with alchemists having to know what material they're readjusting, the story doesn't behave on the level that allows this to make sense.
I
We
can
can
agree with that.
rationalize it all we want to, but the problem is the system is already scuffed. That's why it's in this live stream now. This doesn't make any sense.
Oh
The
my!
story does not fully behave as though it's true with its proper ramifications.
I mean,
To
if
be
you want
fair,
to talk
one
about
thing I can say in
ramifications,
defense-
look at the
one
healing,
thing I
the
can say
healing
in
one.
defense of this story, I'm going to talk about healing in a second, but the one thing I can do in defense of this story is the fact that it's so abbreviated. A lot of the progress that you see characters make, a lot of that growth and everything, and a lot of the way that they portray that growth is kind of in the background. The story doesn't always point at it and say, "Oh, look, they mastered the thing. They've adapted." So, the story had to make concessions to abbreviate it, but I still think this is something that kind of concerns me. I have a comment here.
Oh.
They would be able to control the individual water molecules in the air, though. He says, dang, okay, I have to rewatch the series. I'm not gonna lie, bro, honestly, same. Like, when you really start to look
The
at
original
details of
series is
something,
good
you're
enough.
like,
Rewatch the original. Don't rewatch Korra. It's a trap.
yeah, I have to rewatch it to make a video on it eventually. Honestly.
Oh no!
It's a bummer. And then they're gonna throw me in the pile with everybody that's criticized it, the pile of people that they straw man for believing that Korra has flaws. You know, that massive pile of people they straw man with
I still remember watching
Armor guy.
the Legend of Korra is garbage and here's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
That format is so fun. I gotta make one of those at some point. Anyway.
all right. So are we
Healing.
ready to talk about this healing?
Oh yeah, yeah. Let's talk about this healing.
I'm sorry. Give me a second. I have a
Go
lot
ahead.
of bottled up frustration with this bull crap for like 2 years. This is so stupid.
No, go ahead, go ahead. Let it out. Let it out, my friend.
This is some bull crap, honestly. This is the wrong system for this crap. All right? This is the wrong system. I get that not everybody has the power to bend any element or whatever, right? I get that. So only some people within a nation have the ability. Okay, fine, whatever. But aside from that, the underlying spiritualities that allow people to do things, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Are basically the same for everybody. We even learned that whole fiasco with energy bending that was never fully developed, but that's besides the point. Because everybody has their own spirit and their own chi and everything, and in theory, that's something underpinning the concept of bending as a whole. Why is the ability to use chi or energy or whatever to affect the meridians a ability exclusive to water bending? Not
It's
only
not.
water bending,
It's not.
but only some water bending.
In the original Avatar, it's exclusive. In Korra, it's confirmed that firebenders can do it too.
Here's the problem. Like I said, we don't cover Korra. Korra is a massive lump sum of retcons.
No, I agree. I agree. I'm just clarifying. I'm just
And,
clarifying.
and I should explain this now for everyone's here. If you watched the Naruto video and you read one of that pinned comment under it, I might have mentioned it in the video, but I can't remember. I do not do secondary material, tertiary material, spin-offs, series. I don't do anything like that. If there's a data book or whatever,
Tie-in
I
games.
don't count that because the sentiments that the writers come with are oftentimes fundamentally out of balance with the original piece of work. If it's like if you like Star Wars, like series 1, 2, 3, or whatever, and you want to cover those as a whole thing, that's fair. But if I said Naruto and then I tried to justify it with something in Boruto, knowing full well not only that there's so many retcons, but the mentality of the way the writers work and the universe works is so different, I can't do that. I just can't do it. So, like I said, Korra and Avatar are completely different series. The way Avatar, The Last Airbender works, not only is healing exclusive to waterbenders, but it's also a Kekkei Genkai. And in this case, I use that term negatively. This is the wrong system for that. The basic mechanics of what they're showing us on how healing works, it doesn't make sense for it to just be a unique power specifically to some waterbenders. Up until by the end of the series, this is the only case of there being a Kekkei Genkai within a person's ability to bend. The ability that you can just have. Anything else, it's up to the person who's bending to learn whatever spiritual, philosophical, or skill-based prerequisites the story has set apart for it. Blood bending, you have to get really good at bending, and you have to have enough power from the moon, right? Makes sense. Lightning bending, positive and negative energy in the world that you're controlling, separating and letting it crash back together. And in order to control those positive and negative energies, your energies have to be in balance. You have to be at peace with yourself. Metal bending, you have to exhibit not only the neutral gen to sense the impurities within the metal, but also the precision and strength of bending to control it. This is nonsense. This is just an extra power just because. And if we wanted it to exist, there's a lot of arguments to suggest that it would be better for either most types of bending to be able to do it, or everyone who can control chi to some extent be able to do it. It should just be a spirit bending power. And if not, energy bending. And if not, then no one should be able to do it. There's no specific reason that you can point to without making a bunch of guesses and assumptions or headcanons to suggest that waterbending specifically should have this. And even if there was one, it would still be drastically out of whack with the sentiment of the rest of the entire series. Not only that, but let's be honest, most of the time, the bending that Katara uses in the story isn't that relevant, except for when she brought Aang back to life. And she did that with magic water from the pond. If we just said that magic water from that pond was special, then the story would be exactly the same if we removed waterbending, because most of the healing she does is very minor and could be done by off-screen characters. I hate to say it. That was a lot of rambling. I'm sorry about that.
No, I agree. And it actually covered some points I had for the lightning bending thing coming up.
But yeah, so this is the icing on the cake. We can argue, we can say, well, we can make excuses for bloodbending being exactly how it is. Okay, I can see that. We can say, well, there's a lot of discrepancies with the fact that they get to do ice. We can make it work. They can bend mud, it's fine.
It's fine.
You guys need to talk about how it's unexplained if airbending is visible or invisible. We talked about this a couple of Cosmic Thunderdoom. I remember. We talked about this a couple of months ago. See, I remember things. I'm smart.
Airbending is not visible unless there is particulates. So, for instance, when Aang made the tornado against Bumi, it picked up a bunch of dust and became visible. But like his normal attacks are not visible.
My problem with
there
that
is one discrepancy in the series, which happens during the Prison Break episode, where Katara and Sokka both seem to know where the funnel is for his air funnel. Other than that, it functions exactly as you'd predict, with that one rule about debris in mind.
Interesting. Very
interesting. And this applies to Korra as well. Like they maintain that consistency pretty well.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to relook at all those scenes with airbending to know for sure. I'm pretty sure there's at least one or two more discrepancies, but I'm not exactly sure where they are, so I don't want to talk about them now.
People very rarely actually look at the airbending.
Now, the thing that gets away with the thing about airbending is, one, the story doesn't put forth a lot of effort to address whether or not it's invisible. Two, the story kind of gets off without having to explain it, because the one character who can do it is a pacifist, and he's not trying to use it to murder people. So they don't have to focus on it as much. But
yeah, when he attacks people, it usually is visible. When he's in the desert, he's making like sand blasts.
Yeah,
when he's against Bumi, that's picking up dust.
That's entirely non sequitur to the point that I'm making.
Well, what I'm talking about is he's a pacifist, but when he does attack, it also has the debris. So,
like I said, you didn't let me finish. I'm setting out. There's a bigger picture here. I'm setting out multiple points.
Okay. Go ahead.
Not only
you said he was a pacifist.
You notice there's a lot of combat play when it comes to a lot of benders, where they're doing this and they're doing that, and they see each other and they're responding to each other and they're negating each other's attacks. While you do get that with bending, with airbending, like you just mentioned, there's stuff with Bumi and all that, and there's stuff in the desert. You don't actually have as many opportunities to see that as you do every other element. Because even a lot of the things that he does do with airbending, there's no tangible, some of them, not all of them, there's not a lot of tangible opportunities to show a character seeing and reacting to it, even if they could see it. For example, the air scooter. Doesn't matter if characters see that or not. You know what I'm saying? Doesn't matter if characters can see what he's doing with the wind when he's flying with his staff. Doesn't matter if people would see the wind when they're blowing it on his back when he uses that for super speed. So there are a lot of occasions where and then there are some occasions where what he's doing happens so quick that it scarcely matters anyway. And there's also him doing stuff with the environment that's not directly affecting people. And then there's also stuff with jobbers. There's a lot of that too, where he like yeet jobbers and they don't really get a chance to respond in the plot half the time anyway. But the problem with that is that gets into fight scene autopsy. And it can it's different.
I mean,
Ultimately,
I'm happy to do fight scene autopsy, but that's not what this video is.
exactly. So ultimately, what I'm saying is there if the circumstances of the story were different, addressing that would become a problem because that's scuffed. That's really scuffed, honestly. If it's invisible, that's so abundantly scuffed, but the story doesn't actually have to deal with it that much, so they get away with it.
Yeah. So, I have a slide here for energy bending, and I used a shot from Korra just because I thought it was more like visually impressive. That is energy bending, by the way. I've seen some people think it's like Avatar stuff. That's energy bending.
Yeah, that's another thing I don't like about the way people talk about energy bending. In pop culture, people pretend that spirit bending, energy bending, or whatever, is something that is just a quality of avatars, completely ignoring the context of the awakening that Aang had at the end of the story.
Yeah.
And the lore that was surrounding it, even though it was very bare bones. The information we get blatantly contradicts that pop culture interpretation of it.
Like anybody could theoretically do energy bending. So, energy bending is an ultimate answer to the problem of Ozai. Because we're going to ignore energy bending in Korra. It gets really dumb. And it's only used against Ozai in the show. I think that could have been done really well if it was used differently. So I'm gonna pitch a small rewrite to the show really quick, really small. Are you ready? Ty Lee tells like Zuko and the gang a little bit more about how her ability works, and energy bending is just doing that permanently. That's all it is. It can't give bending. It shouldn't be able to give bending. That's stupid. But taking away bending is just destroying your chi nodes, essentially, or rendering them non-functional permanently in a way similar to what Ty Lee was doing. Ty Lee isn't evil, right? She even gets redeemed later and joins the Kyoshi Warriors. Having her help Aang come up with, first of all, she's a bubbly and awesome character that I'm sure would get along with Aang like so easily, but like having her help give him that way out when all of his friends and his former enemies are like, yeah, just kill him, would be kind of cool and help cement the idea that she's like a hero at that point, right? I mean, Mai gets the turnaround moment of betraying for Zuko. Ty Lee just betrays for Mai, right? That's the only good thing she does in the entire show. And then she just gets to hang with the Kyoshi Warriors? The only interaction the Kyoshi Warriors had was getting arrested by her.
I will say this, though. I think energy bending could be, and probably should be, a little bit bigger than that, what you're saying. I think that would work. It would be an excellent salvage of what we got here. At the same time, I think it could be something much more grand than that.
It shouldn't be more in Avatar.
Before people had bending, they strictly relied upon the chi, the energy within themselves, because even non-benders have that. Even if the means by which a normal character utilized this was much more restricted than them shooting energy balls, because I really don't want them to do that.
Oh god, no! The Dragon Ball lasers in Korra season 2.
Exactly. I don't
no.
want that. I'm not saying that. But you know, them learning to understand the concept of just using your chi effectively resolves a major subplot of the story that the story basically never really fully does anything with in Avatar. They tried to do something with this in Korra, but there's a lot of stuff that's just messed up with it. Doing this in Avatar and just giving it a little bit more development or whatever would open the way for the Avatar to directly affect the spirituality of the world, aside from bending and aside from doing the general Iroh learning lessons about bending or whatever. He could give something to everyone, even if it didn't completely level the playing field. I don't think it needs to. I don't think that's something that needs to be solved. But now it gives non-bending characters something important or something special that they can do that not all of them would be able to do. For example, we have characters like Sokka, and while people like to argue that he got better because he was a skilled warrior or whatever, technically that's true. Most of his growth, the way he became useful, is not only being less bigoted because he lived in a very small world originally, but he grew up. He kind of became the avatar of warriors, so to speak, where even though he's never portrayed as being the best at fighting, that's never where his strength lied. It lies in his mentality, his ability to make tactics and plans. We can't make that be the resolution for the whole world, all characters. You know what I'm saying? So giving a form of spiritual quality that can be trained as a formal practice that can be used to unite the world, to prove that all of the four elements and all of the four nations that embody them all really were one and the same all along, would make the series come absolutely full circle. But they ruined it.
If we're just making quick pitches, and we're trying to avoid like Dragon Ball shit, just have Chi do what it's supposed to do, give you physical prowess.
Yep.
Buff your stats. That's all it does.
Yep.
Like, that's useful. That's insanely useful, really.
Yep.
You know, push comes to shove, just run away.
Yeah.
Get really good at running away.
Could have been remodeled to make the subplot of energy bending kind of have had beginnings all the way through season 1. What if we, like, again, like, what is it called? Water bending healing shouldn't be a thing. What if that was just some special form of chi control that they just knew how to do for some? I don't know what argument that we would use to suggest why it's mainly a waterbender thing. Maybe
just the spiritual element. So flexibility of the soul.
Yeah. Yep. And then you could argue why it's easier for them than everyone else. But then we can learn, maybe in season 2, that there's some special quality. Maybe it's the neutral Jing, or maybe it's the ability to sense vibrations or whatever. We could have underlying spiritual qualities to every element that aren't actually locked to that element, but each of them are better at it, and we can attach that to the concept of spirituality. We could even go do the chakra thing, where how I almost said Sasuke. Hold on a second. How Naruto? No, hold on, wait. How Aang had to go unlock his chakras and everything.
Yeah.
We could take that and the higher form of consciousness or the psychic power that he had that let him know that his friends were in danger. There's nothing to show absolutely for certain that that was a avatar-based thing. He was unlocking those chakras and he was basically ascending in the power that chi gave him. You see what I'm saying? And maybe because of his awakening to that level, it just gave him a universal awareness that allowed him to sense that Katara was in danger. It doesn't have to be an avatar thing. So now, even if we never fully developed it or gave any special details, we can take things that have already happened in the story and make them about spirituality as opposed to bending. Even if people use the basis of bending to do it, because that's what they have available to them. You know what I'm saying? And then we could do that for all four elements, and maybe the chakras, and then that could be the realization that he has that allows him to energy bend, and then he can teach other people to do that.
Okay. That does actually sound really cool.
They didn't do that.
They didn't do that, no. Speaking of things that shows don't do, explaining anything in the anime. So these two next two screens here are from Irregular at Magic High School. If you read the manga, you get a lot of information on how everything works. If you watch the anime, you get nothing. The magic system is actually really cool, and I'm a huge fan of techno magic, so that's even better, right? So the gun that he has in his hand right there, that's a CAD, which in engineering terms is something completely different from what it actually is. But essentially, you can put magic into it, and it will use a program to output magic in a specific way. And you can create these programs to essentially auto-cast spells. The speed at which they do that can be enhanced with more advanced engineering. More spells can be added. In his case, he uses bullets to simulate different spells. I have no idea how they try to explain that in the anime because I haven't seen it in ages. And and it barely makes sense in the manga either. But thankfully, they skip over that and just have it be programmed going forward, because they realized that was a really bad idea and scrapped it because he just run out of spells. But I love the idea of programmed magic, like making circuitry that you just pump mana into in specific quantities, and boom, you get a spell. However, this leads to a lot of problems, because if it's as simple as mass producing these circuits, then finding the best spells and then just putting all the best spells in the same weapon for everyone would make sense. But in the setting, they wanted everyone to have like unique skills, unique combat methods and all that. So no, there's no standardized things. Everyone makes their own CADs. Everyone programs their own CADs. And this guy, the main character, is completely broken. He is. This is going to be massive spoilers. If anyone actually cares about this decade-old trash syscon show, this has a third season. This has a third season, by the way.
Dropped it in season 1.
This got 3 seasons, and No Game No Life got 1. That's the world we live in. So this guy, this is where the spoilers come in, had his brain rewired by the Secret Service, or like Black Ops of his country's military, to like remove most of his memories, most of his emotions, and just like his brain is a magic program. And the magic programs in it take up so much of his like concentration and his magic that he sucks at doing anything that isn't in that list of things that are built into his brain. However, here's a quick list of things that are built into his brain. If you go to the next slide, it's a GIF. That's one of his powers. He can aim the gun at you and disintegrate you. You just die instantly. Unlimited range.
Bruh.
Instant speed. There's no projectile. You just die. That's one of his powers.
Okay.
He can fly.
Benefit of the doubt.
He can fly. He can turn invisible. And probably his most broken power is called Refresh. At any time, he can replace his body with a copy of his that's perfectly fine. So you could blow him up with explosives. You can shoot him an unlimited number of times. You can hit him with his own power, and he'll just respawn.
All right, so I got some questions now. Now I can give them the benefit of the doubt. All right, and I will go ahead and ask the obvious question.
Go
Could
ahead.
they perhaps have added some form of limitation that mitigates the absolute overpoweredness of this character's capabilities?
So there's 3 limits on his total in-universe power. Okay, number 1 is, since he doesn't have emotions, more or less, he's very difficult to motivate to do things. So like he's not gonna go out and actually just like solve everyone's problems.
Yeah.
They have to bring the problems to him. They have
That was
to
in season 1, and he was.
had to do that.
They were like, "Hey, you should help us with this racism subplot," and he was like, "No, I don't see it that way."
I don't really care. His only real motivation is his sister. So the government actually made her a target of international terrorists just so he would get off his ass. Which actually works out perfectly because he doesn't try to get revenge for that either. Like, I don't know why.
Tell me more about this guy's flying ability. So, where I stopped in the anime was there was this drawn out explanation for why a person cannot use their current understanding of magic to make a flying spell.
Oh,
And
so
they had this, like, they were explaining something along the lines of like it was some kind of like input issue.
Yeah,
And then
so-
the next scene was him at home with his flying device.
yeah,
That's where I
so
stopped.
he gives the flying device to everybody, and it comes with a whole explanation. I don't quote me on this because my memory may be wrong on this.
Don't
It's
worry, it's
essentially
the
the
explanation either way.
essentially the problem people were running into is that you needed to have fine control to fly. Like doing super jumps is pretty easy. People can do that. People can also do like soft landings. They can like catch themselves. The problem with flight was the needed calculations to maintain everything, and the fact that the flight circle stays on the ground. So like you cast your first circle to launch yourself in the air, then you cast another one to move forward, another one to like keep manipulating your momentum, and all of them stay, and all of them feed on your energy. It's a huge waste, and it uses so much computation power on whatever device you're using. It's just like a whole mess. He has a solution that makes it way more efficient and like uses less circles or whatever. I don't remember the exact specifics, but the idea is that it's now linked to you, and it's like an angular momentum thing. He actually uses that on some guy's sword as well. So like he has a big old cleaver that detaches at one point, and the other end stays like linked. So like you swing it, and you're swinging it like a small amount, but it'll swing a huge distance because it's far away, because it like maintains a straight line. And somehow that becomes the most effective weapon anyone in the sidecast has, by the way. Like, more effective than fire, more effective than a gun, just a club.
So, I am of the understanding that he is technically of this world that he exists in, the one that the story takes place in. But from what I can see of him, of what I've read so far, of what I've watched so far, and also maybe even from what you're telling me, I have no choice but to give him the label of Isekai main character. Because while he's from this world, it seems like he has a lot of the bullet points that an Isekai character would. And that's not an insult to Isekai, because I actually write Isekai myself. I do believe they can be good. But one of the main bullet points of a lot of Isekai, not every single one, but most of them, is that a lot of characters just get their powers skyrocket whenever they're just in close proximity to the main character for a while. And there are usually excuses for that, but it's still a trope nonetheless. So I have to give him the label. He's a Isekai
That's generally true. Like, Goku exists, and anyone who walks next to Goku suddenly becomes like not at his level, but like just behind him.
Yeah.
You know, Yamcha was able to exist at the Tournament of Power. Like that shit.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he can't compete, but he didn't like die.
Dragon Ball's like at least 12.5% Isekai. That's not an insult. We're just talking.
Yeah,
like,
no, I get it. Yeah.
He is technically from another planet. It's close enough. You get what I'm saying.
So my ultimate problem with it in the narrative is he doesn't need all of this power. He doesn't need to be able to instantly heal anyone he wants, including himself, from any wound. The ability to instantly kill people at any range. The ability to fly, effectively teleport, and go invisible. Like,
the ability to
he did not need to be that broken. Okay, just giving him the healing and killing ability, even if he couldn't heal himself automatically, like he had to shoot himself to heal, that would be okay.
But Krillin though, XD.
No, XD.
You said, but Krillin though. Oh.
I mean, Krillin's gone the whole way, man. Krillin's gone the whole way.
I'm gonna say this real
Credit
quick,
to Krillin.
right?
Credit to Krillin. Give that man his due.
I'm not even that much of a Dragon Ball Z fan. All right. I used to read the manga for Dragon Ball when I was younger. I watched Dragon Ball Z when I was younger, but it was kind of ridiculous. I watched Dragon Ball Kai, and I quit after watching 3 consecutive episodes of Goku charging up a spirit bomb to kill Frieza. So I gave up on that. But even I felt tangible rage when Krillin says, "Hey, Goku, I know you got the Super Saiyan God power. I know you got the Super Saiyan Blue God, Saiyan Super Squared." He said, "Let me run the one so my wife can stop insulting me on the sly." And then this man keeps up with Goku to some extent. Now, I understand that a lot of people will argue that, well, Goku was going easy on them. This is a classic example of it's the writer's responsibility to show me, and until they do, not true. From my perspective, he kept up with Super Saiyan Blue Goku for no reason.
It pretty much is no reason. I mean, okay. If you want to talk no reason, Krillin has been training this whole time. Like, he was able to at least exist near, like, Perfect Cell I mean, he obviously got dumpstered, but he was like able to like move, right? Master Roshi hits someone in the Tournament of Power with a Kamehameha, and it works.
Oh my gosh, don't even. Man. Super has me weary. I don't even know where to start with Super.
Whoosh.
By the way, this is why I will never make a video on Dragon. That's why I'm talking about it now. I will never make a video
Make one like dedicated
that.
to it. Yeah.
I value my emotional energy too much. I can't do it.
Well, actually, we have a slide on with Dragon Ball in here.
Yeah, we'll
get to that. We'll get to that.
The actual.
Couldn't find the real one. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and
so
unfortunately, those slides were perfect substitutes for reasons I'll explain later. Continue on.
yeah. Well, I mean, that was most of my notes on a regular. It just doesn't fit well with like narrative tension to make a guy a god, right? So the next 3 slides are from Solo Leveling. By the way, recommend the anime. It is amazing. The manhwa is pretty good too, but it's like carried hard by the artist. You know, and if it's being carried by the artist, why not go with the anime? Because then you have music too. You know.
Yeah.
I agree. It's dry. It's dry as hell.
Crazy, though.
Oh yeah. Oh my god. Yeah. Every image is like a wallpaper level of quality.
Yeah. I was talking about that brief tangent. I was talking about that before we started streaming. I was telling him that like a third of my job is just making screenshots of anime and manga so that I can use them whenever I actually finally make the video. You notice I have a lot of like anime backgrounds in my videos that I use as like fillers, placeholders or whatever. Yeah, I have so many Solo Leveling either monsters or like background spreads or whatever, just like clipped and cropped in my photos. It's ridiculous. But yeah.
So with regards to Solo Leveling, I had a few notes on the magic system. So I think the main character gets done pretty well for the most part. I'm not a huge fan of his approach to things because he could get stronger way faster than he's currently doing. But we're going to ignore that because my focus is on the system itself for everyone else. So quick recap for anyone who hasn't actually seen Solo Leveling. Hi Ignacio Perez. We are doing fabulously. You know, we're spiking our blood pressure right now. That's what we're doing.
I am so happy that when people actually show up in my comment section, I can actually remember them. That's incredible.
It's amazing.
I remember you made a comment the other day, didn't you? Maybe last week, a few days ago. We're doing all right, man. Glad you made it.
I'm. By the way, keep commenting. I was in his comment section for one video, and I'm now in his video. So you know, keep it up.
Yeah. I try to respond to them as quickly as possible.
Anyway, so quick recap for anyone who hasn't actually seen Solo Leveling. Portals start opening up that have monsters in them. The monsters are immune to conventional weapons. But people awaken with superpowers and like super strength and speed and all these like increased stats. You can't train them. If you get like 20 times stronger, you're stuck being 20 times stronger all the time. Now you can train your muscles, but there's only so far your like biology goes, and that multiplier isn't changing. So you know, like if you get a dog shit power, you're stuck with that power forever. Like you're not getting stronger. However, there is equipment that can be either found or made using materials found inside these dungeons. You can see right here, he has a knife. If it was a normal knife, he wouldn't even be able to stab this goblin that he's fighting. But because it's a magic knife, he can stab them. However, his breaks. My question is, you can see here, he blocks this goblin sword. So this is one of my many questions. Why doesn't he just use one of the goblin swords? It was clearly strong enough to cut through his actual sword. So why doesn't he use that?
Oh, well, you see, as you can see, this series uses video game mechanics, and well, therefore, as I push up my glasses, I would have to suggest that because it did not open up in the menu as a drop from the enemy, it therefore does not exist. It is strictly a part of the goblin's character model until otherwise suggested.
Until otherwise suggested.
That's right. I can be pedantic too. I can be snarky. Yeah,
Yeah.
I learned from the
Um,
comment section of my
but
Naruto.
like he's literally lamenting, "Oh no, my knife is broken. I'm gonna be useless," while sitting next to a bigger sword that was stronger than the one he
Didn't he
came
say
in
he
with.
spent all his money on that little dagger too?
Yeah, he spent all of his spare money because he's also caring for his sick mom who's dying
Yeah.
because of magic plot disease. Um,
Mysterious anime illness.
yeah,
At least this one got get resolved though.
there's an amazing line from one of the like superhero joke videos. Unnamed terminal illness really gets around. Um,
No, no, she had what Itachi had.
Itachi.
He
Uh,
died from Ninja A.
shades. Well, if you think about it, Hashirama, Itachi, and Naruto all have ninja aids.
Yeah, he had that chakra sickness or something. I don't
Yeah,
know what that means.
Itachi just died first, like way faster because the Mangekyo. Anyway, so that's one of the many problems. Another problem is so they harvest like the animal hide, they harvest their weapons, they harvest these like magic crystals, and there's also these like core of the monsters that you can like rip out of them that is used to make much more powerful magic equipment. The stronger the enemy you kill, the stronger the like chunk that you can rip out of them.
Ah,
However, you actually need people for this. You need people for the higher level dungeons, the ones that are like being controlled by like super fast, super smart like boss monsters. But like this goblin could be taken down by just making a machine gun turret that fires bullets made of the magic metal, right?
uh,
And even ignoring like having automated machine guns do that, which would totally work. Why does everyone use a sword? So I'm gonna break down a problem that exists in a lot of fiction. Swords were not so popular because they were better. They were popular because they were very
Styles.
easy to carry. The best weapons in a medieval like combat setting were always pole arms, and I do mean always. Even against other people in like full plate, pole arms were the best weapon you had. In that case, you would want something more like a spike than a slashing weapon. But like a poleaxe, the European poleaxe, is effective against infantry, against cavalry, against armored people, against people who are hiding behind battlements. It's effective at mid range, long range. You can theoretically throw it, and it's very difficult to break. Why aren't these people using poleaxes? Like we're just working under the assumption that like bullets like won't work for some reason. Like maybe the magic metal can't be forged in that way, even though they can
It's
make
probably just
armor out of it.
resources.
Well, they
If
can.
they use guns, they'd have to
Yeah,
spam resources, which I can
yeah.
see them doing to a limited extent. But I still wish I still think they should do it at least a little bit, even if not a lot.
Against things like the Jeju Island ants, yeah, they should have
Yeah,
machine guns there.
yeah.
Like I understand not using it against basic goblins, but for the goblins, have a poleaxe. They're short
Yeah.
range, right? They can't get close if you have a poleaxe and you just one slash dead, one slash dead, one slash dead. Like no problem. Um,
Another thing we also have to consider, again, I'm not saying this necessarily changes much. This is one of those things that is dependent upon the way the writer sets up a meta. Because there are baseline levels of what things would be useful and wouldn't be useful, or would be more or less useful in the universe. But then, depending on the way the universe in question is different from the normal one, things could become more or less useful. For example, they could have argued, and I'm not justifying anything, because they should have talked about it themselves. It'd be one thing if the agility gap was so high, like the increase to agility, or dexterity or cognitive ability was so much different from these monsters than normal humans, that some of the advantages of normal combat that we would try to adapt to using against enemies, you could argue that they wouldn't matter as much. For example, even with a pole arm, poleaxe, spear, one of the limitations of it, while you can use it in close range, a lot of its effectiveness is limited. And if a monster was very agile or spry, one could make the argument. I'm not making it because it's the writer's job, but one could make the argument that you want to, if you don't have that much money for a bunch of weapons, you probably just go with the one that covers the most scenarios, which ends up being the sword. Like if a monster get past your spear, right one,
the weapon that covers the most scenarios in this setting, where people do have super agility and super strength, is gauntlets. Bladed gauntlets. I use in my work a lot. So the thing is, if everyone has super speed, right? Actually using weapons to do things like parry is stupid. Like what he's doing right now, if both of them have super speed, that's idiotic, right? Even assuming his weapon doesn't break, which it does. What he should be doing is catching with the gauntlet the blade, and then he has a second one he can use to attack with. Or blocking it, depending on the like what kind of gauntlets he has and how confident he is in the hand. Because the hand needs to be flexible, so I can understand that being weaker and you need to like brace it against your arm.
I have a comment here that says halberds are OP. Just go freaking Dynasty Warriors on them, bro.
So halberds are similar to poleaxes. They aren't as good. They're missing one element that makes poleaxes better, which is the hammer.
Yeah. But another thing to consider, and this is one of those things where combat kind of comes full circle. Ironically, did not do this intentionally. You said, what were they now? You said gloves, braces? Gauntlets. Limitation there is they don't have that much reach. We come full circle with the spear.
No, so in the context of fighting a spear, in a setting where you have super speed and like the opponent has super speed, you would be attempting to just move in an angular way. If they have to slash with a spear, it is much easier to defend than a stab while you're wielding gauntlets. So you just run around them in a circle until they're not pointing the weapon directly at you, and then dive in. And they have to slash, you catch the slash and kill them.
Yeah. But the difficulty with that is, and there's another thing that I cover in, works of fiction that I write. You gotta look at all the different types of creatures that they're fighting, and then think about how many weapons they could realistically afford to not only carry, but actually to own and maintain. Because you can fight goblins one day, but you could also fight a hentai monster the other day with 6 tentacles who can attack and defend from any direction. Or you could fight an ogre with 2 heads and 2 minds of his own, and the arms work completely differently.
So I'm gonna break this down. Here. There's only 2 weapons you need: bladed gauntlets. So they have like a punching dagger on the back, and they're like the nails or like claws, and a poleaxe. If you have those 2 things, you will not need any other weapons for any other scenario. Because it accomplishes the 3 things that weapons need to be able to do, which is...
Does this account for super durability and super strength?
Yes. So the poleaxe is great for any kind of martial combat, i.e. you're fighting something that is vulnerable in the same way you're vulnerable. So like if either of you stab each other, it works. It's effective against mid-level armor, so we're talking not shit like the rock golem, right? But like an ordinary armor, relative in like durability and scale to the poleaxe itself. And it's best against other people because of the way that their weapons will interact with the poleaxe. The only thing that can really contest the poleaxe is a parrying shield. If someone has a shield, then you just ditch the poleaxe, because now they only have one hand, and you're going to have a massive advantage with the gauntlets. The gauntlets are ideal for countering anything that is substantially slower than you, but has other stats that are higher, because you can do all kinds of stuff. The punching element is useful for getting through thick armor, hence the long blade on the back. Claws for ripping things apart. Hatching weapons. Disarming your opponent is a dominant strategy in settings where people have superpowers. And martial arts is dominant in a world where people have superpowers as well, because you're essentially compensating for your own human weakness with the gauntlets. You know, like if you punch someone like hard in the face, a lot of people break their hand.
That's
Like
true.
people don't realize this. You can punch someone in the
Oh no,
nose
people
and like
realize
break
this.
their
This is the thing
nose
everyone
and
knows.
kill them, but simultaneously break your hand. Like it's so easy. There's a really a cool thing. You know in anime when people like wrap their hands with the bandages. That's an actual thing. It keeps your bones from like interacting in ways that cause them to get stressed and break. The whole point is to keep your hands together. In that case, you're damaging the flesh, and the flesh is much easier to heal. You can also keep punching while you're bleeding your knuckles. Like you can keep doing that. Whereas if you break your hand, you're not going to be able to punch properly.
Mhm.
So that's what that's for. And the gauntlets would be effectively doing the same thing.
Hold on a second. My internet disconnected from my phone. Give me just a second.
No, go right ahead. Go
No,
right
no,
ahead.
we're back.
Welcome back.
Okay.
All right, and that leaves us with one more topic, which was yours. I just want to bring this up really quick. While we were making the slideshow, we noticed that invisibility is missing a letter. It's invisibility.
Oh my gosh.
Like that's official
Now,
materials right there.
just a
Um,
minor note. Originally, I was gonna bring up Dice, the webtoon, but after almost flying into a fit of rage just by thinking about it, I decided I honestly didn't feel like it. So, the next thing I want to talk about is Unordinary. Unordinary is a webtoon. You can find it on Webtoon. It's a story about people with, in their world, almost everybody has powers. And the way their powers kind of varies, but for the most part, most characters have, well, for starters, when they turn their power on, as you can see here, they have stats to their powers. And the reason I'm covering this one is because it's really similar to a system that I've built myself. And so I can kind of see some of the where the writer went wrong.
Look at that face.
Completely side note though, in the Q&A video, Cosmic Thunderdoom, if you're still here, I think I ended up mentioning that there are some systems that if I adjusted them with my rules, they'd be better. This is one of them. I've avoided talking about it because saying that sounds egotistical. But anyway, so let's talk about this specific character. So whenever he turns on his ability,
I like that.
he has all of these mainly come from one thing he's capable of doing. Most of the characters have some kind of energy control ability, but the energy that they manifest and its behavior is very defined. His ability originally was Energy Beam. As you can see, it changed later in the story. It's called Energy Discharge. I'll get to that in a moment. Now, the way his energy beams work is basically it's a small Kamehameha. They're relatively powerful. He's a relatively strong character, and it's a very high potency attack. And while he doesn't have much in the way of any other ability originally, any other kind of stat, whether it's speed or defense or recovery, his beams are so strong that he can use them to push himself. So he uses them to gain additional speed. Now, so every character's ability has levels. And the levels, what the writer explains, is that the character's power level is defined by two qualities combined. There's the actual overall strength of the ability, and then there's the control. So there's power in terms of strength and your ability to control. The higher either of those goes, the higher your ability level goes. And this is true for every character, but regardless of what character it is, even when they learn to use their abilities more flexibly, they still have the exact same ability even if it's stronger. Every single character in the story, for example, there's a guy whose ability is shields. As he got stronger, he still does the exact same thing.
Yeah, lights. Yeah, I agree.
And while my words, it's getting kind of late. And when the writer explains the concept of the power system, she actually brings up several other characters within the story that are minor characters or side characters. And she brings them up because all of their abilities The basic concept of them is exactly the same. There are slight differences, but the only real differences, as far as the system is concerned, from what she says, is his control is a little bit stronger, and his overall power level is much stronger as well. So you can have basically the same ability as someone else, but those two stats can be different. And this is a limitation that everybody has to deal with. But no matter how good you get, you will have the same ability. Except for this guy. Because this guy ended up fighting a character, the main character, John, who we later learned, minor spoilers unfortunately, we learned that his ability is to copy and enhance other abilities. And he's been training on the sly with his ability for a long time. So he has a lot of understanding for this energy that these powers are based off of. And as a result, whenever he uses someone's power, he uses it way better than they do. So this guy shoots one beam out of each hand. He ends up fighting this guy who can shoot one beam for every finger, which is the same ability, right? It's just better. And he realizes that he has to step up his game. He realizes there are things his power can do. He can use it better than he has. He just hasn't realized that up until this point. And so he goes out to become a vigilante so he can train and become stronger. And then for some reason, the writer has him in a situation where he's about to lose. He basically goes Super Saiyan. Oh, I didn't put that slide there. Oh well. He goes Super Saiyan. He has this big burst of energy. And from that point on, his ability changes. His ability isn't beams anymore. His ability is energy discharge. He gets to control not only the size and shape of the beams, but the angle at which he projects it. He can basically shoot it out. He can disperse that energy over his entire body and just shoot it out in every direction if he wants. If instead of shooting a beam, he wants to shoot a ball or a bulb of energy, which he does later in the story constantly, he can do that. If he wanted to use it to block an attack on his arm, like he can stretch it out, he can do that. It's not an absolute power in terms of how he can control this energy, but my problem is he has ki control now. The problem is the writer breaks the fundamental rules of this system when his power evolves. Every single character has the same ability, even when they control it better or when it gets stronger. For example, in the same chapter that this guy evolves and becomes stronger, there's another character who's been a vigilante for a while. His ability is discs. His energy makes these discs. He can make more than one disc, and he uses them to attack and defend. No, I'm sorry, that was a villain, my bad. This was a villain that he was fighting. But anyway, regardless of, even with the main character John, his ability doesn't do anything different. It does exactly what it did from day one, he just does it better. And most of these characters, 80% of them, is just an energy control in a very specific, limited format. There's one character who shoots in arcs or boomerangs, right? When he his ability never changes. There's a character that shoots lightning. That's her energy. All she does is shoot it. Even when she gets stronger, because she's a high tier, her ability, to my knowledge, at least to the point where I dropped the story, 200 chapters in, doesn't change. This guy, his power is an inherently better version of almost every power in the system, because while everybody else is limited to one specific form of what they can do, they might be able to change his size, shape, or strength. He can just do half of whatever he wants. And this is when I knew that I was going to drop this story.
Sounds like a fitting time to drop the story.
Yeah. Yeah, so you just take the inherent limitation that defines the entire system. And this is something that I have in my work. I'm going to talk about a little bit, but I don't want to talk about it too much. And look at that. After I drop the story, he gains invisibility and teleportation. Where was that? I never saw it. He gets this after the fact. Never mind that they spelled it wrong.
Never mind they spelled wrong. The thing is, I can kind of buy like super speed as a form of energy discharge, but teleportation has nothing to do with it. And invisibility is kind of like the opposite of that.
Yeah.
And heal link. What the hell is heal link? Like, come on, really?
Yeah. To be fair, I can explain that recovery in this system, it's really weird. Like, in his case, the speed increase he gets comes from pushing himself with his beams. But a lot of the different characters in the story, some of their powers are more ambiguous, and so they get these buffs that aren't exactly obvious with the actual energy manifestation that they create. For example, I can't remember what this guy's name was, but his ability was Catch Up. It was a meme, because sometimes the names of the characters or their abilities are memes, and his energy was red. And so it increased his strength a little bit, and it increased his speed. There are a lot of characters who either have the ability to heal other people, or who can make tonics. I'm not sure if tonics are attached to people's abilities, but beyond that, there are people who are healers, and then there are people, a lot of characters actually, who just have an innate recovery to their power because they just do. So I'm not gonna insult the writer for that. That's just something that some characters have more than others.
Okay. But yeah, invisibility and
Actually,
teleportation.
Face has a comment. It was within him all along. He just had to discover it. XD, priceless. Yeah, I kind of agree with that, but this is one of those things that I take a lot of care in my magic systems. I have a system that's very similar that I'll probably talk about one day eventually. I'm not going to talk about all of it because it's kind of complicated, but the thing that...
Make it its own video. Make it its own video.
Yeah, the thing I have to talk about here is what I refer to as dispositions. Every character has some kind of energy or whatever, and some people have their own dispositions. They are forms that energy takes, behaviors that it takes. And the more rigid that those dispositions are when you're born with them, the stronger your energy is when they take those forms. But the more rigid a disposition is, the less flexibility you have doing anything outside of that form. So if my disposition was, I could have say power of fire, and there could be somebody without that, there could be somebody who has that same power, but they don't have the disposition. I could have the disposition boomerang. So, and it could be a very strong disposition, meaning it's really easy for me to make the boomerang, and it'll always be stronger when I do it, but the more rigid it is, the less potential I have to do something else. My ability to control that power outside of that form is diminished. So, if your disposition is too strong, you can't do it. And that seems to be basically what seems to be going on here. No one else has the ability to undo this specific form that their power takes but him. And there was no setup to suggest that he could do it either. Well, in this system that I'm referring to, the training to undo a disposition is much more normal. Moreover, some people simply don't have dispositions that are as strong as others. While that means that the upper limits in terms of their power output will be more limited, that does mean they have more flexibility. So the system is kind of a game of chicken. Even if everyone had the exact same power, the exact same energy, the forms, there's a lot of give and take when it comes to the forms and how useful that those forms make people and how easy it is to get away from those forms if it becomes a limitation. But yeah, that's all I had to say.
All right. Well, unless you have any further notes, it is getting rather late. And we can always do another, live cast another time.
Yeah, rather late is a bit of an understatement.
I mean, it's only 10:42 for me. I mean, that's not that late, right?
Yeah, I got work tomorrow.
Yeah. No, you rest well. All right. You know how to stop the stream and everything, right? I don't have to walk you through that.
Button on OBS?
Yeah, the one that says stop streaming. That's the one. Yep.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all for joining in my chat, by the way. And of course, thank you to everyone who signed on to Magic System Mondays chat. Have a wonderful